I had a very unsuccessful marriage. My ex-husband drank a lot, which caused him to be very unstable, and he would occasionally use violence against me. Whenever this happened, I always felt very scared and helpless. Although I was in great pain, I chose to endure it for the sake of my children. I knew that divorce would be very damaging to my children. I tried to stay positive and face my children, but it was not an easy thing to do. When my son went to college, I started to rethink my marriage. I realized that I couldn't take the pain anymore. I decided to end the marriage, which was a very difficult decision. But I also knew it was the right decision because I didn't want to continue to suffer this pain. Looking back on this marriage, I recognize that I had my share of blame. I also learned a lot, which has helped me grow into a more independent and stronger person. When I got divorced, I moved out of my former home. I found an old apartment that was cheap but needed to be redecorated. Since I didn't have much money on me, I decided to do the renovations myself. Not only would it make my new home look better, but it would also give me a better sense of accomplishment. I purchased some cheap paint. The regulations were not as strict as they are now, and many of the paints had excessive formaldehyde levels. I knew it would have an impact on my health, but I didn't have the extra money to buy very expensive paints. In addition to decorating, I had another problem to face. I had surgery on my back 3 years ago and still need to take painkillers to relieve the pain. I know the long-term use of painkillers can take a toll on my health, but my pain has made me dependent on them. I am trying to find other ways to relieve the pain, such as yoga and massage, but I know it will take time and patience. As a devout Christian, I have tried to incorporate my faith into my life. Hopefully, my family members will be influenced by me as well. I put God first. I hope that God will protect my family from any harm. Even though I always believed in the power of God, my marriage ended in failure. It was hard for me to get any help and support when I was at my most vulnerable. I expected to have the support and help of those around me, but in reality there was none. This was very disappointing and surprising to me. At the time, I was living in a friend's house, and I wanted to move into my new home early, so I worked late every day. The renovation was very troublesome and the whole process very time-consuming. Each piece of furniture had a different color and texture, and I had to carefully mix different paint colors to make them look more harmonious. One day, after working for 7 hours straight, I felt pain in my back. I took a lot of painkillers to relieve the pain, but these medications also made me feel very tired. I felt like I needed to take a break. The air in the room was pungent, but I didn't care too much, because I was so sleepy. So I lay down on the couch and fell asleep. I don't know how long it took, but I felt it was getting harder and harder to breathe. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't move my body. I knew that the air in the room might be poisonous, but I didn't take any measures to protect myself. I tried to shout, but I got no response from anyone. I felt like I was leaving this world. My soul was leaving my body, and it began to move upward. The movement was accompanied by a slight sense of trembling. My vision became broader, and I was able to see every corner of the room. As I was rising, I had a very wonderful feeling. My body was lying motionless on the floor. I felt like an observer. My mind was now very clear, and my perception seemed sharper, but I couldn't understand what I was experiencing. I felt like I was dreaming, but there was a big difference between this feeling and dreaming. I began to feel scared. I didn't know if I would stay in this state forever. Suddenly, I appeared in a dark space. When I reached the dark space, I felt a sense of indescribable fear. I didn't dare to make any movement because I didn't know what kind of reaction I would get. I could feel some kind of creatures around me approaching toward me. And this feeling made me even more fearful and uneasy. The creatures were moving faster and faster, as if they were aware of my presence. I don't know why, but I could see them clearly in the darkness. Their appearance was somewhat similar to humans, but much taller than them. Their skin looked very hard and took on a grayish hue. In the midst of this fear, my emotions became unusually anxious. I didn't know what they wanted to do, but I knew they were definitely malicious. I felt like I was about to be dragged by them into an endless abyss of darkness. Suddenly a light appeared in front of my eyes. The light was strong, but I could feel the warmth and hope it brought. The light grew brighter and brighter until I could not see anything. Then, I was dragged out of the darkness. I felt a strong tug pulling me forward. Gradually, the darkness disappeared. I found myself being taken to a completely different place. Here, everything was bright and full of warmth and calm. The air here was fresh and free of the pungent smell from before. This was a beautiful space. I felt strange, because just now I was shrouded in darkness. I noticed a magnificent building ahead of me with a golden ball on top of it, which I think was its symbol. The door of the building opened and out of it came a man in a long white robe. He came toward me, and he was holding a book in his hand. The book looked ancient, and its cover was made of heavy leather. There were some strange symbols and patterns engraved on it. As I looked at the book, I felt a mysterious power emanating from it, making me wonder what the book was about. The man in the white robe had a kind look in his eyes. He patted me on the shoulder, and at that moment, I felt a familiar feeling, as if I had lived in this place before. I felt accepted by this place. As if this was my forever home. I knew that no matter what happened, I could find peace and shelter in this place. The man in the long white robe said, "Welcome home." I felt very strange and I asked, "Where is this place? Who am I? How did I get here?" The man replied, "You have lived here before. You came here to continue your mission." He explained to me, "This is a very special place that transcends anything you have ever known. Many people refer to this place as heaven." I asked him, "What is my mission?" He smiled and replied, "You will know when you go back." I said, "Go back? Can't I stay here?" He said, "You can stay, it's up to you to decide. This place is indeed a wonderful world, but if you choose to stay, you will never be able to return to your old life. I can't make the choice for you, but whatever choice you make, I will respect your decision." I asked him, "What decision should I make?" He replied, "You must listen to your inner voice. Are you willing to let go of your family?" When it comes to my family, the only thing I think of is my son. When I think of my son, my heart is filled with anxiety. I can't imagine how he will live when he leaves me. His father is not a competent guardian. He can't even take care of himself. I didn't want my son to live with him, I had to go back. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the couch. A pungent smell permeated my surroundings. I tried to stand up, but I fell back onto the couch. I felt so weak that I could hardly perform even simple actions. I stood up with all my might and walked to the door of my room. I pulled the door open with force and walked into the stairwell. Suddenly, my eyes became black and I fainted on the floor. I couldn't control my body, and it was as if I had lost all my strength. I knew that I needed help. I closed my eyes and prayed silently that God would help me. When I woke up again, I found myself in a hospital bed. The doctor told me that I had been unconscious for several hours and that my neighbor had found me. If I had arrived at the hospital later, the consequences could have been serious. Hearing this, I was very grateful to my neighbor. Later, when I learned something, I felt it was my prayers that had been answered. Our apartment was very old and did not have many residents. That morning, my neighbor was on his way to work when he realized he had left his wallet at home. He thought he couldn't take the subway without his wallet, so he had to go home to get it. Just as he was about to enter the door, he suddenly heard the sound of me falling to the ground in the stairwell. He rushed up the stairs and found me passed out in the stairwell. He called the emergency number first and then waited until the ambulance arrived. I am very grateful to my neighbor for his help and to God for hearing my prayers and allowing me to continue living in this world. I didn't tell my son about it at the time because I didn't want him to be worried and I didn't want his schooling to be affected. Even though I was a single mom and life wasn't easy, I always felt God watching over me. It's been many years since this happened and I feel so relieved that my son is now a father of 2. I still remember the moment my son became a father. He looked so mature and confident. I am proud of him and proud of myself. I have learned to appreciate life and everyone I spend time with. I also learned to trust myself and God, even in the face of difficult times. I feel very content and grateful for my life. Although I have gone through many difficulties, God has been with me through every one of them. I am also proud of my decision. Although it may not have been the best choice at the time, I believe that every decision was part of my growth. Now, I enjoy the time I have with my family. As incredible as this event sounds, it is true that God saved me. God is very real. Although every prayer we pray is not always answered, I know God is doing what He thinks is right.